It looks like it's 6 o'clock. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the public workshop number 3 for the periodic evaluation for the groundwater sustainability plan for the Santa Clara River Valley East groundwater subbasin. It's a mouthful. This workshop is part of our series of public meetings being held at the SCV-GSA, completes the state-required periodic evaluation of the groundwater sustainability plan. Whether you've joined us for a past workshop or this is the first time, thank you for being here tonight, and we appreciate you taking the time. How to engage in tonight's workshop. So before we get started, tonight's meeting is hybrid. With just a quick housekeeping items, tonight's workshop is an informational public workshop, and we'll have about 30 minutes at the end of Q&A. If you have any questions as you go, please use the chat or Q&A feature to submit questions or comments. All public input received as part of this workshop will be documented and considered as part of the evaluation process. For questions after tonight's presentation, please email scv-gsa@scva.org. Now for tonight, tonight's workshop will be divided into 4 parts. We will start with the team introduction and overview. Then we'll dive into DWR's recommended corrective actions on groundwater levels. Then we'll jump into DWR's recommended corrective action on interconnected surface water, and we'll end with an engagement activity and dive into Q&A. So the purpose of tonight's workshop, SCV-GSA is conducting this meeting and other workshops related to the state-required periodic evaluation to inform the public about current groundwater basin sustainability, needed clarifications to the GSP, and to obtain input from the public. Tonight's workshop will cover the Department of Water Resources recommended corrective actions regarding chronic lowering of groundwater levels and interconnected surface water. We'd like to take a moment to do some introductions. I'm Laura Gallegos. I am the Senior Communication Specialist on the team assisting Rick and Sarfraz. Do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Hi everybody, Rick Beer-Goots with SCV Water.
Hi everyone, Sarfraz Alam, Senior Water Resource Planner from SCV Water.
Good evening, Tyler Hatch from Intera Incorporated. I'm a principal engineer and supporting the Groundwater Sustainability Plan periodic evaluation.
I'm John Porcello. I'm a principal groundwater hydrologist and water resource consultant with GSI Water Solutions, supporting the team conducting the periodic evaluation, and was heavily involved in the development of the original GSP.
Hi, I'm Katie Evans, Senior Communication Strategist with Woodard & Kern. I'm helping facilitate the stakeholder outreach and engagement component of this periodic update.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rick, who will carry us forward.
Thank you, Laura. I have 2 slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tyler Hatch. And let's see here. So 2 overview slides. What Tyler's going to present tonight is fairly complex. It's one of the most complex parts of groundwater sustainability plan development and adjustment. So I thought a couple introductory slides would be good so we can make sure that it's clear to stakeholders on the call what we're talking about tonight and what the objectives are. So our groundwater sustainability plan is approved. It's a very good plan, but like many of these, the Department of Water Resources has asked for recommended corrective actions. So we're going to talk about 2 of those tonight. First one has to do with this first bullet, undesirable results. The current approved groundwater sustainability plan identifies an undesirable result as groundwater levels below a minimum threshold in a certain percentage of wells over 3 years. So that's what it means. There's 3 components to that. And the groundwater sustainability plan says if we have that condition, that could be an undesirable result. The Department of Water Resources, however, said, you know, we want you to word it in a different way. we want you to really look carefully at what an undesirable result would look like for chronic lowering of water levels. So we're reframing this, we're looking at it in a little bit of a different way to meet the Department of Water Resources recommendation. And so we're going to adjust the text. It's one of the things we're talking about tonight. So the first bullet is the text that's in the groundwater sustainability plan. This middle bullet, the bold, is an example of how that text might be adjusted. So that's our first step, to adjust the text to comply with DWR's request. And then the next slide is my final slide. Our goal tonight with stakeholders is to simply discuss these concepts with you about updating the text for this specific undesirable result and get your feedback. We've got a couple examples in the presentation that you'll see tonight about this updated text for undesirable results. After tonight's meeting, after we hear your feedback, we will regroup and arrive at the most appropriate text for the undesirable result, and then we'll share that in a future workshop. The next step is then to establish the groundwater levels that reflect that undesirable result. So what are the water levels that would cause that undesirable result to take place? So that's it in a nutshell. So step one is get the text right. And step two is determine the groundwater levels that would cause that condition to take place. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tyler, and Tyler's going to walk through some of the more detailed work that's going to get us there. By the way, we're also going to do a similar process with groundwater dependent ecosystems. We know that we need to make some adjustments with the water levels, the minimum thresholds for groundwater dependent ecosystems. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tyler. Tyler?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Go to the next slide, please. So first, as Rick mentioned, I'm going to talk about the recommended corrective actions for chronic lowering of groundwater levels provided by the Department of Water Resources in its assessment of the approved groundwater sustainability plan. And I want to discuss a little bit more about what the department is looking for in addressing those recommended corrective actions as part of the periodic evaluation, and then how we internally are thinking about it, and then really talking about an approach to addressing the recommended corrective action. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the three parts of the recommended corrective action for chronic lowering of groundwater levels. Part A is asking for clarification, excuse me, about the specific undesirable results being avoided through implementing the plan. Part B is asking specifically to use the seasonal low groundwater levels when setting sustainable management criteria. And then part C is asking for minimum thresholds to be established that account for any clarifications made to the undesirable results in part A. So those three pieces together form the recommended corrective action from the department that we're trying to address through the periodic evaluation efforts. Next slide, please. So in the approved groundwater sustainability plan, the undesirable results for chronic lowering of groundwater levels, as Rick mentioned, is defined in a quantitative way, but by aquifer, and it's this percentage over a period of time. And so percentage of representative wells in the representative monitoring network. And so for the alluvial aquifer, we have 25% of the representative wells over 3 years. And in the Saugus Formation, it's 50% of representative wells over the 3 years. And you can see the map on the right shows where these representative monitoring wells are located and separated by the aquifer. Can you click for the animation? So really, what does this mean from the basin's perspective? DWR's recommended corrective action is wanting to make this language a little bit more specific to what is undesirable in the basin. Next slide, please. The approved groundwater sustainability plan also defined minimum thresholds at representative monitoring wells, and these were defined based on historical low water levels or future low water levels simulated under full build-out conditions using the groundwater flow model. And as shown in this example at VWD 160, we're using the future low condition based on the simulated results. Next slide, please. So DWR's recommended corrective action asked the GSA to clarify specific undesirable results. Here we're providing two examples of potential narrative changes to the definition of undesirable results. And the goal is to get feedback on this type of description that we'll use to inform analysis to quantify what groundwater levels look like when these undesirable conditions occur and how they translate to groundwater conditions occurring throughout the basin. As requested in the recommended corrective action, the definition of undesirable results will be related to minimum or seasonal low water levels. Next slide, please. So the sustainability goal for the basin is defined in the groundwater sustainability plan. And part of that definition, it can only be achieved through the avoidance of undesirable results. The definition here isn't changing, but it sets the stage for defining and quantifying undesirable results for the basin. And the sustainability goal has two main objectives shown here, one for chronic lowering of groundwater levels, and then one for interconnected surface water, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. So that first objective for chronic lowering of groundwater levels is to maintain the groundwater levels that continue to support current and future groundwater uses and a healthy river environment in the basin. And then we want to also avoid significant and unreasonable effects on beneficial uses in the basin, including groundwater dependent ecosystems caused by groundwater extraction. So for this part, we'll focus on that first bullet, and then we'll come back to the other one. Next slide, please. So using the objectives from the groundwater sustainability plan sustainability goal, the process for how sustainable management criteria are established under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act can be summarized as shown. You may have seen this concept in a previous workshop when we were discussing the recommended corrective action on water quality. The first step is really defining those undesirable results, that narrative description. And that's really the bad thing you want to avoid. And then from there, we can establish representative monitoring sites. And then at those representative monitoring sites, we define quantitative thresholds for when those bad things start to occur locally. And then finally, we need to quantify how those local thresholds scale up to basin-wide impacts. So that makes up the 4 steps to really quantifying what undesirable results mean in the basin. Next slide, please. Focusing on the first step for defining undesirable results and the sustainability goal objective related to chronic lowering of groundwater levels, we're providing an example again of the refined or a refined definition of undesirable results for the basin related to chronic lowering of groundwater levels. And that definition is the inability to meet future groundwater demand for municipal, agricultural, and domestic uses due to declining groundwater levels caused by pumping. Next slide, please. So the example definition of undesirable results shown here frames the undesirable result more in line with a bad thing that groundwater management in the basin is trying to avoid, the inability to meet future demands for groundwater. We think this sets a strong foundation for defining sustainable management criteria for chronic lowering of groundwater levels in response to DWR's recommended corrective action by really relating water levels to supplies. Next slide, please. So once we've defined undesirable results, the next step in the process is to establish the representative monitoring network, monitoring sites that we can use to understand groundwater conditions across the basin. And the monitoring network was established previously in the approved groundwater sustainability plan. However, we want to make some updates to it to reflect new data collected since the initial groundwater sustainability plan was completed, and to account for wells that have been impacted by things like recent flooding that took out the GDE well, for example. Next slide, please. So then, once we have the refinements to the representative monitoring network, we will establish water levels that are indicative of impacts nearby those wells. And these impacts are related to the specific beneficial uses and users near each of those representative monitoring wells. And then we'll define a relationship between water levels and undesirable results, considering all available information to determine the most appropriate groundwater levels, and these become the minimum thresholds. Next slide, please. From there, we have the strong foundation of knowing what we're specifically trying to avoid through the sustainable management of the basin. We have a monitoring network identified, and we know the levels at each monitoring location that may lead to localized impacts. So the last step is to connect the minimum thresholds back to the undesirable result quantitatively. And so in this step, we're trying to identify a combination of minimum threshold exceedances that would cause undesirable results to occur at the basin scale. Next slide, please. So circling back to the approved GSP's quantification of undesirable results, we're using that 4-step process that I went through in the last few slides to update these definitions, starting with a specific thing that we want to avoid. As an example, the inability to meet future groundwater demand for municipal, agricultural, and domestic uses due to declining groundwater levels caused by pumping. Next slide, please. So to summarize where we are in the process of revising the sustainable management criteria for chronic lowering of groundwater levels in response to DWR's recommended corrective action, we've provided a couple examples of defining undesirable results related to these chronic lowering of groundwater levels. We have a representative monitoring network that is consistent with the approved groundwater sustainability plan, but we're integrating new information available since the groundwater sustainability plan was submitted. Based on the feedback we received tonight, we'll be working to develop the sustainable management criteria in a way that is consistent with the definition of undesirable results, and then connecting those criteria back to the definition of undesirable results for the basin through the combination of minimum threshold exceedances. And the last two of those things, as you can see in the diagram, are still under development, and we'll have more to share in the next workshop. So happy to take questions on the chronic lowering of groundwater levels.
Oh, thanks, Tyler. That was nicely presented. Yeah, we've got some time for questions. Stakeholders would like to, or they're typing them into the chat, right?
Correct.
If they have them, okay.
I don't see any now though, Tyler.
Okay.
Let's wait. Let's wait 20 seconds or so.
Yeah.
Tyler, I'm going to advance the slide. Laura, is that okay? Are there any questions, Laura?
No questions.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Good, great. So now I'll transition and we'll discuss the recommended corrective action from DWR on interconnected surface water. And interconnected surface water is an area of the groundwater sustainability plan that DWR provided corrective actions to many groundwater sustainability agencies on this issue. And it's probably the most complicated sustainable management criteria to address. So want to start by discussing groundwater dependent ecosystems, which are the primary beneficial user of interconnected surface water in the basin. Next slide, please. So stepping back to the sustainability goal objectives shown previously, the second objective is to avoid significant and unreasonable effects on beneficial uses in the subbasin, including groundwater dependent ecosystems caused by groundwater extraction. As you can see in the map, their potential groundwater dependent ecosystems have been identified in the subbasin, and monitoring wells have been established to monitor groundwater levels in the vicinity of those potential groundwater dependent ecosystems. Next slide, please. So interconnected surface water often coincides with groundwater dependent ecosystems, and that's defined as having a saturated hydraulic connection between the surface water and underlying aquifer. The two diagrams in the figure on the top part show interconnected surface water, and the bottom figure shows surface water that is not interconnected with groundwater. Interconnected surface water can change based on location within the basin due to geologic conditions or surface flow conditions, and it can also change at different times of the year based on hydrologic conditions. Next slide. DWR provided this recommended corrective action for depletion of interconnected surface water, which is one of the 6 sustainability indicators or categories of undesirable results. Depletion of interconnected surface water is caused by groundwater pumping in basins that have interconnected surface water. So this recommended corrective action has 4 parts. Part A asks the Groundwater Sustainability Agency to define how it determines an undesirable result is occurring related to interconnected surface water. Part B asks the Groundwater Sustainability Agency to include or consider guidance provided by the department on interconnected surface water and depletion. Part C is asking the GSA to continue filling data gaps and implementing a strategy to manage these depletions of interconnected surface water. And then Part D asks the Groundwater Sustainability Agency to prioritize collaborating and coordinating with regulatory agencies and interested parties. Next slide. For Part A of the recommended corrective action, we are planning to adjust minimum thresholds at the groundwater dependent ecosystem monitoring wells. And that's based on data collected to better reflect groundwater conditions and elevations that may impact those groundwater dependent ecosystems. For Part B, we are planning to review the guidance when it becomes available. However, it has not been released at this time. And so when it is released, we will review it to determine how it can be considered in this periodic evaluation. Next slide, please. For Part C, we are planning to also use the guidance when it comes available to determine what other kinds of data gaps or monitoring may be necessary. In addition, the Groundwater Sustainability Agency is planning to replace some of the groundwater dependent ecosystem monitoring wells that may have been washed away with some recent storms. And then for Part D of this recommended corrective action, we are continuing to coordinate and collaborate through the public process, including through workshops like these. Next slide, please. So some of the next steps that we'll be taking to address this recommended corrective action for depletion of interconnected surface water are really evaluating groundwater elevations at these groundwater dependent ecosystem monitoring wells that better represent potential for undesirable results for groundwater dependent ecosystems, really reviewing the interconnected surface water guidance when it becomes available from the department, continue working towards ways of identifying and improving our understanding of how groundwater pumping itself may be impacting groundwater dependent ecosystems and habitat, and fill those data gaps. And then preparing for workshop 4, where we'll be presenting some of the revised groundwater level sustainable management criteria based on feedback we received tonight and additional analysis that we'll be conducting. And then also the updated groundwater flow model, we'll be talking about that as well. And then, of course, continuing to coordinate and collaborate to make sure that we're getting everything we can out of the process and not missing anything. Next slide, please. All right. Happy to take any other questions.
Oh, I just said thank you, Tyler, and we'll give it 30 seconds or so to see if stakeholders want to type questions in. Anything, Laura?
No question.
All right, let's keep on moving then.
Okay, at this time, we're going to begin our engagement activity. So this is a hybrid meeting, and so our engagement activity is something that you'll be able to do from your computer at home or a phone if that's how you're calling in. So next slide, please. So we'll be conducting this activity on Menti. Laura is going to put the link in the chat. So if you are able to just click that link, that will be the easiest way for you to join the activity. If you are on your phone or you want to use your phone instead of your computer, you can scan the QR code. Or if it's easier for you to just go to menti.com, the website menti.com, you can see it there, MENTI. It'll ask you for a code and you can type that in. It's 91432325. So I will give everybody a moment to join. And in the meantime, I'll take this minute to say that if you are watching this recording after the live presentation, we will keep this activity open for you so that you can go add your feedback through this same activity. It'll be the same website and the same code. So if you'd like to participate in this activity after the live presentation, please do feel free to do so. Okay, looks like we've got people joining. If anyone's having any trouble joining, please do say something in the chat. We have people here who can support you and help you get online, but I do think it looks like everybody got in. Laura, would you mind stop sharing so that I can share my screen? Please. Thank you. Okay. All right, so if you are logged into Menti, you should now see a screen that says Workshop 3 Engagement Activities. Looks like everybody who's on the call is in that activity, so let's go ahead and get started. I should share that the answers to these questions are somewhat anonymous, so you will be able to see other people's answers, but you will not know who gave that answer. So if you don't want to speak up, please feel free not to. But you may answer the question any way you'd like, and no one will be able to see who that answer is from, though they will be able to see the answer. So our first question, please read the question below and indicate your answer. Before tonight, how familiar were you with the term undesirable results as it's used in the GSP? On the left side, we have not familiar at all, and on the right side, we have very familiar. So please use the bar to indicate where you land on this scale. We'd like to get some sense of whether or not you were involved in the previous work with the groundwater sustainability plan, and if this is a familiar term to you. Looks like we have 2 responses. If you are having any trouble responding and need any support, please let us know in the chat. I'm going to give it another minute. I should just ask too, Laura, are you one of the 4 people who are in the mentee activity?
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to know you don't have to log off. That's just fine. Okay. All right. If anybody's having trouble, let us know. But it does appear that those who are here tonight have some familiarity with the term undesirable results. So that's helpful information. Thank you. Our next question is, when you hear undesirable results for the chronic lowering of groundwater levels, what does that mean to you in practical real world terms? So for example, if you are a private well owner and that has a meaning to you in relation to your property or your operations, if there's anything like that that you can share with us as far as what these terms mean for you in your day-to-day or the things that impact you most. Okay, it may be that nobody has any thoughts on that question yet, which is fine. If you do, you can certainly go back or feel free to add anything into the chat that you'd like to share. Okay, so now we're going to do some ranking. These are all potential impacts related to undesirable results, as we've talked about. Please rank these impacts from most important to least important. So things that are the most important to you on top and things that are the least important to you on the bottom. If you could drag and drop them into what order you think they are most important. I'm starting to think I should get Jeopardy music to play when we do some of these activities. Okay, looks like basin-wide drought is the top most concerning issue for the person who responded. So appreciate that feedback. I think this is good information, good insight. And we'll go ahead and move forward. Again, if you're having any trouble, please do let us know. We can certainly help you with these activities. Another scale, like we did in the very first question, please read the question below and indicate your answer. Does it make sense to you to define undesirable results for groundwater levels as the loss of ability to reliably produce groundwater? So does not make sense is on the far left and make sense is on the far right. So please indicate where you fall on that bar. Makes sense. Great. 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 Okay, glad to see that, because as you saw proposed within the slides, that is the direction that we were taking, looking forward to your feedback on it. So that is nice to see some support for that direction. I'm not sure if the third person is able to respond, but I'm going to go ahead and keep going. Okay, if applicable, how do groundwater level changes affect your operations, costs, or long-term planning? If it's not applicable, feel free to throw an NA in there. But if it is applicable and you have some feedback, we'd love to know how this has real world effects on you so that we can take that into consideration in our planning. Okay, thinking not applicable. Okay, just a yes or no question. Do you think the example clarifications to undesirable result, do you think the example clarifications to undesirable result text better describe potential undesirable results? So the change we made, the clarification we made, do you think that that is an improvement? Okay, got a yes, so that's positive. I'm just going to give it another second for the others logged on in case they would like to answer. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or in the Q&A, so I think it's not an issue of having concerns with how to use the Menti, but if so, please do speak up or put something in there so we can help you. Okay. What other ideas would you like the GSA to consider in describing undesirable results related to groundwater levels? So we talked about some of the things that we're considering today. If you have some additional ideas that we should be looking at as we describe undesirable results, we would love to hear those ideas at this time. I'm giving this one a little longer because if someone has an idea, it's probably going to take them a minute to type it. There we go. Description of how undesirable results at GDE habitat look like. Okay. So maybe more clarification on the GDE habitats and that relationship. I think that's, really important. I think that's something Tyler talked about is, we want to have more data there and we want some additional guidance there as well from DWR. So sounds like we're on the same page. Okay, I will move on. How could Santa Clarita Valley GSA protect groundwater levels while minimizing impacts to you? So we're looking at what actions we could take that would be supportive of our efforts to protect groundwater levels without having some sort of negative impact on you or your operations or your livelihood or your lifestyle. So if you have any thoughts on ways we might want to approach that, this would be a great time to share those thoughts. And again, I'll give this one just a little longer because I do think it might take some time to have an idea and type it in. Okay, let's move to the next question. What questions do you have about groundwater levels and surface water conditions? I'm sorry, about how groundwater levels and surface water conditions are connected in this basin. If you have any questions that you didn't voice earlier during the presentation, or you just would like us to look at as we do our analysis and examination, this would be a great time to include those here. If we can't answer them today, they might be something that we should look at as we work on the plan. I'm sorry, I said plan, but I meant periodic update, periodic evaluation. Okay, let's just go to our last question then. So as you heard from Tyler, our next workshop will be around revising groundwater level sustainable management criterion and the updated flow model. So is there any specific data or information you would like to see in our next workshop? If there's anything you have a specific interest in, we can absolutely try to make sure we're able to present that to you in a way that's helpful. So if there's any specific data or information you'd like to see at our next workshop, please let us know. Okay, well, thanks for participating. Oh, there we go. An overview of the groundwater flow, how the groundwater flow model works, how it's used to establish. Okay, that's a great piece of feedback because I think that's exactly what we want to talk about next time. So Appreciate that. That is exactly what the direction that we're headed, and we'll be sure to take that into consideration as we plan the next workshop, and we hope you'll join us for that. Okay, that being said, thank you again so much for participating in those activities. Laura, if you want to go back to the slides, please. Great, thank you. So just to give an overview of where we are in the schedule and where we are in this stakeholder process, we've been working on this periodic evaluation since January. We must turn it in by January of next year, so looking to wrap it up by December. We had workshop 1, which was held in January, and then a GSA board meeting shortly after that. Our second workshop, which was in February, was really focused on the groundwater quality sustainable management criteria. Our third workshop, which you are attending right now, was this discussion around groundwater levels and interconnected surface water. So we will be having a special board meeting on March 23rd of the GSA board to give an update on our periodic evaluation process. And then the next workshop that we'll have for the public will be May 4th. So at that point, we will be looking at that updated flow model as was requested, as well as the revised groundwater level sustainable management criteria. So our intent was to show you some ideas today, get some feedback, and then bring those forward with the updated flow model in May. The board will meet again in June and in August. Once we get into the fall, we'll have a public review draft of the periodic evaluation. We hope at that time that you'll review it and provide comments on any part of it that you think you would like to comment on. And the intention there is that we'll take it to the GSA board during a special meeting in November with hope for approval in December so that we can meet that January deadline. So we do look forward to seeing you at that next workshop. If you can jump to the next slide. I do just want to share and reiterate how important this public participation process is. We really value your feedback. We are creating this plan for you, or the plan exists for you, for the users of the groundwater basin. And we appreciate you being a part of the discussion about how to sustainably manage it. So thank you for attending workshops, but that is just one of the many ways that you can participate. We do hope you will review the periodic evaluation in the fall and provide comments. And we also hope that you'll share your local knowledge and observations as we continue to move through this process. You can stay informed on the things that we're doing through our website and email updates. We'll also be posting notices of public meetings. But our website is a great place to learn more about what's going on. And we continue to post these meetings, these recordings and activities on our website for any who'd like to learn more. So if you know someone who you think might be interested in this that wasn't at the meeting today, please do let them know that this meeting recording will be available to them on our website. Next slide, please. Our next meeting, as discussed, will be May 4th from 6 to 7:30. Just like tonight, it will be a hybrid workshop, so you can attend online or you're welcome to join us in the engineering conference room. The address is there. Please do register if you'll be attending virtually via the Zoom registration link or the QR code. And with that, I think I will hand it back to those of you in the room to wrap up our final Q&A.
Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay. Great. Well, we'll give it 30 seconds or so in case there are any other questions that come up. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. And if you have other questions, you can reach out to us on the website and email that Laura shared in the first part of the slide. As Katie mentioned, the Mentee is gonna be open for a while too. So if you have other thoughts, you can log in, put comments in the Mentee, even though we're wrapping up the workshop for tonight. And again, just thank you, everybody. We appreciate your attendance tonight. Thank you, everybody. Laura in the room too, and Katie and Tyler.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great evening.